So, what is the impression about how things are playing themselves out, and what do we expect from what we've seen so far? Could that be an indication of what's to happen from 10 a.m. up until 4 p.m. today? We'll find out. Let's head to Abuja. Makwe.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Joining us right now is Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, who is Executive Director, Development Specs Academy. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to ask you whether it's turned out a pleasant surprise for you in terms of how things have turned out in Anambra State. And I say that with regards to the conduct of the elections.
Oh, yes. Very good news there at several levels. The parties, all of them, conducted themselves with dignity. There were no riots.
The parties?
The political parties. There were no disruptions that were seen to be sponsored by any of the political parties. The electorate turned out. Initially, the concern, strong fear was that people will not turn out, partly because of the IPOB threat, and also partly because there was even suspicion of apathy. Lo and behold, the threat was withdrawn, or the sit-at-home presumed order, and people turned out. And let us put it on record, INEC made available materials in good time. The initial fear that the materials might be taken to Imo State or was going to come from there and all of that, all those things disappeared. So in terms of INEC conduct, actually the conduct gives us hope for 2023, if that will come. As for the equipment that eventually had problems, those are technology-related problems which cannot be blamed on the user. If my phone, there's a glitch and I can't send a text message, it doesn't mean I didn't intend to. And you see, the organization very quickly rose to the occasion, proposed a new date. And so, ordinarily in the past, INEC would have been accused of mischief by extending it to one day. How come everybody is so calm and confident and relaxed? It must mean that the organization has garnered enough confidence to warrant the faith now reposed in it by the people of Anambra State. So, on the cards, it looks very good.
Were you in Anambra over the weekend?
No. I had a program at Defense Headquarters. I couldn't escape that. By the time you finish on Friday, you can't fly. And these issues of national security, if you like.
Mm-hmm. But you were monitoring very closely.
Very closely. Anambra is my state.
Indeed.
And I have every reason to rejoice because the candidates, the two major candidates that are on the front row, any of them as the governor of Anambra State will be a blessing to the state. Capacity, international exposure, they're going to bring in new paradigms. And there are not people who would like to fail. You don't imagine Soludo will get into anything and want to do badly. No, he will pull down the wall.
Well, some people
will want to maintain his brand.
Some people will say that it's early days yet to call a winner. I mean, because we're yet to, how will I put it now, we're yet to conduct elections in Ihiala. And you see the optimism that all of the candidates are going to the polls with. Look at how the papers are even reported, and leadership has this one. APC, PDP, bank on 148,000 Ihiala voters to overturn Soludo's lead. So anything is still possible.
Yes. First, I'm not calling results. I'm not INEC. I'm saying that the candidates themselves, particularly one or two or three of them on the front
Usually when they call the front leaders, they call about 4 parties.
Yes. There's a lot of excitement in terms of the caliber. When you use the following criteria, you know, personal history, performance in public office, academic standing, leaning towards, if you like, good governance, international exposure. So we're likely to end up with a governor that will set new paradigms. And then some people like us will go home more regularly.
There have been questions as to why it was impossible almost to conduct elections in Ihiala. Does it speak to the fact that security wasn't, well, we have hailed the security agencies. We've also praised the people for maintaining the peace as well. But, you know, there are huge questions, a big question mark on why Ihiala was an exception to where elections could be conducted.
Yes, I've also tried to look into that. Quite frankly, all the answers one can speak of are largely speculative. The issue on the table right now is that elections didn't hold, or certain things that should have happened in Ihiala didn't. That would have led to riots and people talking about being disenfranchised. It didn't happen. That would have led to one candidate or more, or the parties themselves, declaring all sorts of things. It didn't happen. The good news is that election is going to take place. All stakeholders are waiting for it. It might There's the assumption that it will overturn, what do you call it, the readings at the moment if it goes one way or the other. But see the scenario I see. All the players are now in the same pitch. So it's not Ihiala and Niocha, Njikok and the rest of it. It's just one local government. They say there's 148,000 votes. Fine. No one person is going to walk away with that 148,000 votes. So whoever has the highest collective, cumulative number of votes is going to get at least one extra vote. And that means the lower the votes with which you're going to Ihiala, the lower your chances of picking it. But even if you pick the votes, you will then have to deal with the matter of spread and so many other things. So as to why I didn't hold, I can't say for sure this is the reason, but there was no clear proof of mischief that is established and confirmed. There was no clear indication of any particular party being responsible for disruption. But what is clear is that all parties as stakeholders are determined to behave themselves. And that means they want to turn out, they want to secure the votes. So whatever joker anybody thinks he has under his sleeve, others are going to pull it out and drop on the ground for him. You're not going to go there and rig. If I'm contesting, I won't watch you do that. Knowing that you won't watch me, I will concentrate on processes, on getting my members to know what we have at stake, on telling people that, look, we already have X number of votes, so it is in our interest to, to go out and vote. Fortunately, there's no threat there's no threat to life. There's enough security, physical security, that is. And so I expect very reassuring outcomes from Ihiala. And the candidates, if and when one emerges as governor-elect, should have the dignity and decency. Congratulate others. See what's good in their policies and take it, because it's about my state. Yeah.
I'm wondering whether, it is not important that we diagnose correctly why elections didn't take place in Ihiala. Because if this is supposed to be a test to what should happen or what could happen in 2023, I mean, INEC still has maybe one or two more tests before we get to 2023. I think Osho will also be in the offing perhaps next year or so. But if this is supposed to be an indicator as to, preparation grounds for what will come in 2023, perhaps, we should take a closer look as to why elections didn't happen in Ihiala. You don't agree?
I agree. We should go beyond taking a closer look to confirming actually why it didn't take place. There will definitely be a post-election, a post-mortem, and then a post-election report. 3 or 4 factors are to be determined with regard to why it didn't hold. Did materials get there on time? If the answer is yes, what happened on the day of the election? Was there enough security? The electoral material, the equipment, the electronic equipment, did they malfunction? You must get definite answers to this. Above all of that, you deal with the conduct of stakeholders. Were there cases of interference or attempted interference? Was the conduct of the officials above board? Would you say, for instance, that some officials were approached for some form of mischief and they declined, and you have a record of that? All of that must be specifically
security was the major reason we heard. We were able to gather on the ground. From what we understand, Ihiala borders Olu has been a hotbed of IPOB activities.
ESN, yes.
Yes, so if that is the situation, if that is the current situation, and we've been told that, there was some appeal of some sort to INEC, to IPOB to withdraw their sit-at-home threats, there were questions as to how successful that appeal was, if there was still a threat of insecurity in a place like Ihiala.
I think we might need to distinguish between fear of insecurity and actual threat of insecurity. Olu is just practically Ihiala, both and the contiguous communities. But the question to ask is, were there clear indications of threat that were likely to disrupt the elections? The answer actually is no. IPOB threat had been withdrawn. There were no such fears. So we can speculate on maybe that's a factor in it, but the truth of the matter is that in terms of substantive physical presence and indications of clear and present danger, there was nothing to put on the table. And let's not forget, this is an off-season election. Many people complain that the federal government deployed too many policemen, 30-something thousand.
34,000.
Yes, but the logic of it is simple. This is off-season. That means elections are taking place only in Anambra State. That means if I'm in Plateau or Enugu or wherever state, and my job is to provide thugs during elections, that's when I do business. That's my Christmas season, if you like.
And it's very close to Christmas.
Well, and then you find that there's only one place elections are taking place. All the mischief makers in the other 35 states will target their market for thuggery and all sorts of mischief and guns will be Anambra. So the right thing to do when you have an off-season election is what the federal government has done. Overwhelm the physical space with security, observable physical security, and then also ensure that the people sent there know that their business is to provide security and not intimidate the people or misbehave. In terms of the conduct of the security personnel, there has been no indication, not even whether it's clear, that they did not conduct themselves properly. So the matter of whether it's IPOB is something that will come later, but let's not exaggerate. That officially they had withdrawn their sit-at-home threat. And you can't overlook the fact that even while the sit-at-home threat was on, there were 2 or 3 issues. Number one, people stayed at home more because of fear than clear proof of threat to their lives. You're in your house, you hear that a bus was burnt. In another place, 1 person killed. 3 instances across the entire southeast. Now, you're not sure. Those who were in that bus, they were not expecting it. So your issue would be, why should I bother to go out? Not that there are people, because you don't take a complete inventory of those who carried out those interventions, negative interventions you find, okay, you have a total of 11 or 23 people. Do they have the spread? Do they have the capacity? It's opportunistic, if you like, I wouldn't want to use opportunistic social disruption. A few people gather here, do their own. So 3 things. If you were to say, use your numbers and make the Southeast not to work, it won't happen, the numbers are not there. If you then say, oh, Southeast people, tell IPOB to go to hell, they'll say no. Many of the things IPOB is saying is true, and all of that. But the important point to make is that the IPOB threat and the reaction to it is more from the angle of self-preservation than clear evidence that for everybody who goes out, he or she may be taken out.
So today, I mean, some people will say that it's not like as if INEC has conducted perfect elections so far in Anambra. Yes, they have received some notable commendation in terms of the conduct. However, the elections are far from perfect. So if that is the situation, what more are we looking to see them perfect in the elections that will be conducted in Ihiala today?
Well, part of it is out of their control. The equipment just has to work. That's number one. Number two, if it's claimed, dubiously in my view, that it was all about security, then there should be. So since this is only one local government, people are first of all sure that nobody will attack them, and the security agencies will be in dozens around the polling units. So that already provides some level of assurance. INEC also, its communication is always upfront, if you notice. If it wasn't given the briefing of problems we are developing, there will have been strong suspicions about what were the problems. What would we want to see INEC do more? INEC may want to look for third-party endorsement in places where some of these things are happening. Spread it. We are all contesting. So this is the situation.
What do you mean by third-party endorsement?
You are stakeholders. This is a problem on the table. This is it. Do you see that as a problem? They say yes. Please, that's what we are saying. Say it too. We become more believable. That will help. It's doing a bit of that, but it will need to be a conscious, Yes, it hasn't conducted a perfect election, but nobody is looking. There's never been record of any perfect election. But more importantly, INEC has scored higher than I know it to have scored in any previous elections, and that's a significant point to put on the table.
Well, the Beavers has implication for what will happen in future. I mean, we saw what the candidate of ABGA, Professor Soludo, went through in his own polling unit before he was able to vote. Almost what we saw with President Goodluck Jonathan.
Precisely,
when
in last 2015,
in Okey. Yes, so there'll be questions as to the deployment of technology, especially when you look at how contentious it has been in our Electoral Act, and the recent amendment that, is currently ongoing. It's not yet done. It's not finished. Yes, they have they've covered good ground, but it's not completely done. So there'll be questions as to if we're having problems with this particular technology, is it something that a lot of Nigerians will have faith in for the bigger elections when 2023 comes?
Well, the usual thing, and this is confirmed by world history, is that the majority of people never have faith in anything new. That's a fact. So if you were to wait for endorsement by everybody, it will never happen. That's number one. Number two, change does not occur because there's consensus, but because there are people who have vision and who pursue it. Number three, the car is a very dangerous, what do you call it? Equipment. At the time, if you remember when they were, it was just, I remember the recorded responses of some English nobles, that they hope nobody will venture into the public domain with that noisy contraption. They are comfortable with their bicycles and cars, but you don't listen to them. Or somebody says, oh, you know, you can have a blowout. Or in fact, the engine may stall. That's no reason. Nigeria must become part of the 21st century. There is clear evidence that the equipment works, just like there's clear evidence that the phone works. Facebook had a glitch and took us all out for how many hours? The whole world. Businesses were shut down. Billions of dollars were lost by organizations that were relying on Facebook, Twitter, and I think WhatsApp and all that. All were knocked out. Now, you now say, okay, the solution is to abolish Facebook, abolish the telephone. Let's use town crier in Abuja. You will send a town crier to my house to come for this program. No, but, you know, so we must completely ignore that objection. It does not have substance. It's not progressive. It's not intended to make us belong to where the rest of the world is. And the deployment of technology would subconsciously, subliminally, impact knowledge upgrade and subtle education of the citizenry, migration into the digital age, etc. All of that has to happen. So we see it as just election, but it's more than that. People will begin to get accustomed to the fact that there are things other than the traditional, you know, that can make you function in today's world. Some say, oh, I don't like the machine, but you're determined to go and vote, you go. So the population of those against it will keep declining progressively until the bulk of the people understand it and are at home with it. So no, I don't share the view that is something to worry about. My position is that every effort must be made up to the last minute to ensure that it's working, and that there must be some continuous monitoring to ensure. And whenever there's a glitch, make it public. So once that gets in the public domain, suspicion, why would people be relaxed? They are relaxed because you're telling them the truth. And that's another element INEC, you know, will seem to be doing well on. But the point is that let us not also over-celebrate. This is one state. With all INEC resources, leadership, management, focus on just one point. In 2023, it will be in 36 places. So let them also find a way of assuring us that there will be a replication of the level of success they recorded in Anambra, at least in this election. Perfect elections. In fact, if you did a perfect election, that's precisely the reason why we shouldn't trust it.
Perfect. Well, yes, indeed. But then there were questions as to what we make of the allegations of vote buying. Vote buying happened before and during. There were attempts to do it during the polls. And there were, I think it was an NGO, CDD, that came out to say that they were, you know,
Clear.
Clear recorded cases of vote buying. In some instances, very few, but some nonetheless. There was resistance by the voters, but nonetheless there were attempts, and in some instances successful attempts by the political parties to buy votes. So what do we make? How does that impugn the integrity of the polls?
Well, I also have very elaborate claims about vote buying, with even indications of which party was performed very well in the amount of money put out and which one did not. But that's one thing. The question then, does it impugn the integrity of the outcome? At two levels, let us look at something. There will always be people who operate on the fringe of legality in any contest. So for some who still belong in the school of thought that, look, we can't let it go away, they would hope to subvert the process by vote buying. So that is to be expected. Fringe actors will always be there. You saw the American results, even the former president's reaction to confirmed results. So it's a human, sometimes not to want to give up. Now, about impugning the integrity, it will depend on the volume of financial intervention, not claimed, confirmed, and in what areas. And then it will raise the question of, if there's evidence to that effect, what steps can be taken to invalidate the financially induced votes? Now, that's a hurdle. Anybody who is ready for that has the court processes to follow. It's not sufficient to cry on WhatsApp and, you know, make speeches. If you have the recording, go to court. unit so and so, this is what happened. We have it on tape, and therefore, it cannot. We challenge it, we demand that it be dropped. That will need to happen. But overall, one doesn't get the impression that there was, there was a massive deluge of financial adventures in polling booths. And also, in terms of the parties that appear to be doing well, they will be doing better than others. They also seem to be those who ordinarily on their own before the elections also had some good rating in terms of presence, capacity, and political muscle. You know, so when you look at all of that, those who are not doing too badly, also not doing too badly now and all of that, it presents a collection of variables that should be difficult to disaggregate and then move from there to say, actually, yes, it does impugn the integrity of the outcome. Somebody will need to establish that, and I'm not sure that can be established easily. It was, in my view, not an overwhelming index during the elections. Some candidates in their own right had their popularity. Inducing people will happen. And you know, we've had cases where even the candidate or the party itself in the past were not the ones who set out to induce, but enthusiastic, if you like, enthusiasts. My Oga must emerge. And I want to show him I delivered my area. That sort of thing can happen.
Well, let's take a break at this point. I'm sure my colleagues would like to intervene on this matter when we come back from this break. Please stay with us. Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, the Executive Director of Development Specs Academy, is still with us in the studios, and we're talking about the elections in Anambra State. Today, the people of Ihiala will be expected to come out to vote. Anambra has 21 local governments of this number. 20 local governments have already had their elections and the results declared. However, there was no election done in Ihiala. And today, INEC will be conducting elections from around 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Our correspondent, Seun Okimbaloye, will be giving us, our political editor, will be giving us updates shortly to, tell us what is happening in Ihiala as the people prepare. However, we're looking at what INEC has done already to project into what we expect of it to do today. Now, part of what we were discussing earlier is this incident of vote buying. Some people have said that INEC should now start looking for ways to prosecute this sort of offense. INEC usually stops at a report after the elections, and they say they really do not have the capacity. In some instances, they've tried, but they are looking for another agency which will be in charge of electoral offenses. In this instance, and looking at how our elections are done, is it something that we should be taking a more serious look at, an electoral offenses commission or an agency?
No. You see, we make the mistake of assuming that once there's a problem, you create an agency or commission. We have the Nigerian police force, we have the DSS. We even also have Civil Defense Corps. What will you create an agency for? Just to deal with electoral offenses? What is it you do during elections? Either disruption of public peace or attempt to bribe somebody or what again? So all of them fall within crimes that are already punishable by existing laws. You now set up a commission, you spend billions to set up, they have offices all over Nigeria to deal with electoral offenses. It's really insulting when one thinks of what it suggests that we don't really think things through.
Now, when we think about how many offenders we sometimes have...
No, I was coming to that.
Yes.
On the matter of offenders, you say INEC is being accused. INEC has no business apprehending a single offender. INEC is not a law enforcement agency, and I keep trying to make that point. Why do you provide police at polling booths? And the DSS are in the background somewhere. I was once a returning officer, not a returning officer, what do you call the person who mans the booth? I can't even remember my title. And yes, they came to rig the SDP this thing. They were giving money to all the polling booths. It was on Lagos Island. I told the poll clerk that it's not going to happen here. I was about to be beaten up. Fortunately, the police, they keep going around with patrol van. That's when they came up, and that's what we got to. So let's not bring INEC into what is not his business at all. INEC, okay, I'm the one at a polling booth. I'm not a staff of INEC. I'm an ad hoc staff, trained for about a week or 2 days or 3 days, and I've mastered the job of managing elections. And somebody is misbehaving. It is not my business to touch him. That's why the law enforcement agencies exist. So expand their brief. The brief doesn't even need to be...
That's a brief of the law enforcement agencies.
Already, this is criminality. Elections is a public process. You're trying to stop a public process. The police can pick you up. Civil defense can pick you up. DSS can pick you up with the military or whoever. Local government authorities can intervene, but they are dysfunctional at that time because nothing is working. But please, let's not push for any electoral. Just like the other time they were talking about a process of crime agency, that if people are caught for corruption, their houses are seized the money, an agency that will monitor it and make sure it doesn't get lost. I beg your pardon. No, we don't need a process, what do you call it? An electoral offenses, commission, agency, whatever. These are institutions that end up not reporting to anybody. People get salaries for doing nothing throughout the year. We are creating too many of them. As we speak, recall that I think a food security agency was set up about 6-7 months ago. Indeed. What is it doing? And so many others. In the last 2 years, at least 6-7 other agencies. We are creating redundancies and deploying public funds on consumption and salary paying without productivity and service delivery. No, I don't support the idea.
Well, I have to thank you very much. We all have to thank you very much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning and sharing your thoughts with us. Dr. Okey Ikechukwu is the Executive Director of Development Specs Academies and speaking with us here in our studios in Abuja. Thank you so much for coming in. Well, let's send this to Lagos now and let's see where we're going from there. Gentlemen.